All right, so my name is Paul Tagliaferri. I'm the chair of the Northborough Zoning Board of Appeals. It is January 6, 2025, and it is now past 7 p.m. So this open meeting of the Northborough Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Zoning Board of Appeals are allowed to participate either in person or remotely. The Act allows Northborough Zoning Board of Appeals to meet in person and remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda, unless the chair knows otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream or the recording of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. Unless such participation is required by law, this meeting will feature public comments. First up on the agenda is consideration of petitions submitted by ZHS Trust for a special permit to operate an adult daycare on the property located at 3943 King Street, map 82, parcel 31 in the Business West District Zoning District and Groundwater Overlay District Area 3. It's also continuing the consideration of petition submitted by ZHS Trust for the modification of the site plan approval and use variance to allow the operation of a senior living facility with proposed decrease of 22 units, proposed increase of 53 parking spaces, and associated modifications on the property located at 38 King Street, map 82, parcel 20, and 39 to 43 King Street, map 82, parcel 31, in the Business West Zone District and Groundwater Protection Overlay District Area 3. All right. So I think just from a let's see. So first up, from a procedural perspective, I think, what we can do to start is, I would like to focus firstly, so I think we did, so what's taking place between our last meeting and this meeting is we've had, as a board, or I should say, Lori has had conversations with our town council, and on the advice of town council, we are going to be looking at sort of this as a completely new case. So regardless of what has happened previously in 2018 and 2021, this application will be a standalone application, meaning that we will have a decision for a use variance, and then we will also have a decision for a site plan, a special permit site plan approval. So that was on the advice of town council. He felt that it was probably the easiest way to sort of go about doing so. So with regards to the use variance, I'd like to start there in terms of our discussion as a board. I think the use variance is critically important. It's sort of the impetus for everything that we're sort of discussing here today. And so I think, again, just based on conversations and emails that Lori's had with town council, with the use variance, right, I think that there was sort of two different tacks or two different sort of avenues for this application and how a board we should be looking at sort of the use or the relief sought for a use variance, right? And so the first one was providing relief for the assisted living definition that is in the Northborough bylaws, right? So just from a high level, Northborough has a definition for assisted living. It basically says, anyone that wants to open up or use something that is an assisted living needs to be licensed with the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. There's obviously a bunch of other criteria. And so based on this application, the applicant is looking for relief from that sort of licensing. The other avenue is to essentially allow for an increase in the density of the multifamily use bylaw. So in the Business West District, given the size of a given property, our bylaws allow for multifamily use. Just a back of the envelope calculation for those two lots that are in front of us today, it's approximately 11 multifamily units that can be allowed, right? So it's one of the properties I think is 40, 2,000 square feet, the other one's 48,000 square feet. If you look at like the density and dimensions, you get 2 units per 20,000 square feet, and then it's a 7,000 for every other unit after that, give or take. It's about 11 units, right? That still requires a special permit that comes from our board. So given that, and given those two criteria, that is sort of how our board, or the lease is going to look at this case. So there will be no sort of modification of previous things. I'll also say that I think that we will certainly not come to a final decision tonight. Any sort of final decision that we do tonight would require sort of, myself and probably mostly town staff to write a decision within a sort of 2-week time frame. And I don't think that that is sort of appropriate. But what I would like to get out of this meeting is sort of directionally where this board is headed in terms of their thoughts on this case, this application, to at least give the applicant, to give town staff, and to give us as a board sort of directionally where we are sort of headed, right, where that direction is. So the first thing I'd like to sort of dive into is, and I think again, what is the most important thing is sort of the use variance road that we have in front of us, and the question of whether or not we're sort of granting relief for allowing assisted living facility without sort of the licensing agreement or the licensing that comes from the Elders Affairs Office, or sort of a relief with regards to the density of multifamily, right? So just to kind of level set, I hope that that's kind of, that's kind of what we're thinking as a board. So I don't know if anyone has any opinions on those two avenues. I can certainly give you my sort of initial thoughts on the two. Does that work? Okay. So I think with regards to the assisted living review, with regard and sort of allowing an assisted living facility to operate without the licensing of the Executive Office of Elders Affairs, I don't see how that's an appropriate avenue for this, an appropriate sort of relief with regards to the variance. A quick sort of understanding of what the Executive Office of Elder Affairs does is there, essentially a state government licensing oversight committee that is there to sort of protect our seniors and protect, older people in facilities as such, right? So if you think of other assisted living facilities in town, you can think of like Coleman House, Whitney Place, that exists in both Northborough and Westborough. And I don't believe that, allowing for an assisted living facility to not operate with appropriate licensing is a good use of a use variance, right? Which obviously the town of Northborough allows. And then with regards to the density, so as I said earlier, multifamily is allowed in Northborough. Multifamily is allowed in this part of town. Our current bylaws allow for this particular property up to 11 units, right, that they can apply for. I don't believe that a multifamily, even if it is an unrestricted multifamily, that is 66 units, is an appropriate use or an appropriate relief that we would grant for a use variance. So that's just kind of I have several reasons why. I think if you look around town, I think if you look at other multifamilies that exist, even if you Avalon as an example, Avalon has, I think it's 382 units on 42 acres. It's approximately 9 units per acre. Right, this is 66 units on roughly 2 acres. Right, so there's definitely a big difference between other multifamilies that exist within town and this application. So I kind of wanted to start there. I don't know if anyone else has any other opinion or thoughts on use variance, but I think that that's probably where we should start this discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Right. So having been on this board for every application from this applicant that has come in front of us, it just feels like we've come full circle. The initial proposal was for basically apartment complexes on this unit, which we denied. The applicant came back and asked for assisted living. 66 one-bedroom units. And it wasn't a super popular decision, but what we approved in 2018 was a stretch. And the fact that now the applicant is coming back once again, going from 88 one-bedroom units to 66 units with 54 two-bedrooms. So we're going from 88 bedrooms to approximately 116 bedrooms. And the fact that the MBTA law that just went through the state and we're considering high-dense housing is 15 units per acre. What this applicant is asking for is 33 units per acre. Blows that out of the water. The only reason why we approved this is because of assisted living. We looked at the macro economics of it and the aging population, the fact that folks need additional help to get to live on their own, things like that. We approved that. The fact that we're coming back now and the applicant is balking at certain things like 40B, no sidewalks, additional parking spaces, really raising a lot of red flags for me. Because we initially, and again, denied the first proposal because of the traffic on King Street and because of the impact to first responders and to the schools. The assisted living, which age restricted or not, most likely are not going to have automobiles. They're not going to have to drive around. They're going to be basically on property. So the fact now that we're just coming back, basically doing a 360 from the initial proposal, I'm not in favor of what's being proposed tonight for that reason alone.
Thanks, Brian. Does anyone else have any other initial thoughts or opinions?
I do, but I kind of wanted to wait for some of the more senior members to share their thoughts first.
So I guess it's
share
my
mine.
Mr. Chair, are you going to ask everybody the same, or are you just, because I think you put a totally different emphasis of my application. It's not my application. You gave, and I saw your, attorneys may say something, or you just wanna just go ahead and get to the scene first.
No, we're not making a decision tonight.
But I think the way I'm hearing the board, first of all, with all due respect, sir, I am not here to ask for, I did not apply for multifamily zone variance. So I think that's out of the table for me. I didn't apply for that. So I don't know how we can even take that avenue. A. B, I did read your council's view, and the council said whether it's a new or existing application, you do need two separate votes. It did not say categorically that has to be a new application. And please bear in mind, sir, that I do have an approval for 88 units, and I am not saying that it will be an assisted living facility without executive officer under the affair license. What we are saying is that Northborough bylaws is very unique, that does not, basically address the growing needs of seniors. And Westboro, I gave you example of 5 facilities, and none of them, sir, work under the executive office of elderly affairs. If you build an independent living senior facility that does not require a license, and if you need some due diligence on that, you are welcome to call. It is not required by law for the facilities to get the license from executive officer of elderly affairs if they do not do certain things. So I am building a facility which is basically in demand for, and most towns are developing those nowadays. And I gave you examples of Highland. Highland does not run under a license, and it's very much a facility which we have. And then Shrewsbury and Willow, the example you gave, they have 2 separate facilities side by side. One is an assisted living, and the other one is independent living. And in the independent living facility, they do not run under a license. So basically, we are, we are in a similar. Most towns deal with independent living and assisted living similarly. And your council clarified that and I agree, with everybody here that the facility, your assisted living definition has that particular verbiage. And that's the reason we're here, to ask the variance. So I'm not here to ask for 40B. I'm not, you guys ask that question, we discuss that, but I'm not here for that. I'm not here for, asking a multifamily variance. I didn't apply for that. All I'm here for is to ask the waiver on the license for executive office of elderly affairs, simply because I am not offering those activities, and hence we are going to offer much more cost effective. Yes, you can say that the number of bedrooms, but the square footage has not increased of the in-law. And basically the units are bigger because we have lesser number of units. And basically all towns are going in that direction. You don't have that direction, and that's the reason we are here. Okay. So I would hope that we focus on what I applied for. We do not even look at the avenues of increase. I'm not asking for increase in density. I am asking for reducing from 88 units to 66 units, which actually lower your burden on two major issues. One, your inclusionary and our low income requirement. It does. That's the fact. It goes from 88 to 66. Whether it's 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom, that doesn't matter. It does reduce your burden. Secondly, it does reduce your burden on your sewerage, which is already, out of capacity. So
You're saying reducing 88 to 66, but you're adding more bedrooms. How does that reduce capacity?
It does, because I'm not using your sewer. If I go 66, I'm using, and if you put senior only, if it's multifamily, it doesn't work. But if you put seniors, when you're building senior homes and senior livings, then the required of the septic is different per gallon, per bedroom, versus if you build multifamily. So hence, our septic meets the requirement. So we will not be using a sewer. If it's 88 units, then I will be using your sewer. So I am lessening the burden on the town for the sewer capacity side. So these are the facts.
Yeah. So
these are the two major facts. A, I will be reducing the impact on your overall count. B, I will be reducing the impact on your, just 2 more minutes, sir. And then on top of it, that basically we are not dealing with any, by the way, even though it's 55 or whatever age restricted, you still cannot have under 18 kids on this type of facility. So hence you are not dealing with any schools. When I'm reducing certain activities and putting independent living, you're not dealing with Coleman type situation, and that's the reason your police, your fire, all those requirements are happier because we'll have far lesser calls on that. So again, the decision is yours. You can live with 88 units assisted living if you're happy, but that is actually increasing your burden on your resources. What we are trying to do is we're going with a new trend and trying to. So I think we cannot complicate this with increasing density and this and that. We're not increasing the density. And then also we are offering, major improvement on and that's the reason we brought our traffic engineer and we spent a lot of money, and we thought that today we will be talking about, the traffic flow and the parking and all that. And that's the reason we have, our team here.
Okay.
But if I would say that we will go and look at those, opportunities we are doing. We're going to be spending literally millions of dollars to improve all this flow and all this entry to Northborough. But if that's not what you guys want to talk about, that's fine.
So I would just say, we are proceeding under the advice of town council and how we get from what you had proposed in writing versus what our bylaws are saying. So I appreciate it, and we will give you every opportunity to respond.
I read those meeting minutes. Those advice as well. Laurie sent it.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He said whether old or new, that doesn't matter. It's not. He said that you gotta use this as a new application. That's not what he said. That's not what he said.
We're proceeding as it's a new application.
But that's your perception, sir. That's not the legal counsel said.
Okay.
That's your perception. That's fine. He said it doesn't matter. You need 2 separate votes. That's what he said. And he did not say that you look at the multifamily. That's all your perception.
Mr. Chair, if I could help.
Sure.
Just speaking for myself only, And maybe this helps, maybe it doesn't, but I'm still looking at this application for myself the same way. In terms of what's in the application, what standards apply to the application, whether we call it an amendment or a new application. So, and I read council's email as well. I'm also, at the same, so the comments I am going to make whenever I get to make them, to me, it isn't making a big difference whether stylistically we treat it as a new application or amendment of a prior approval. So to me, regardless of who's right or if anyone's right or what's the correct outcome of that, to me, it doesn't make any difference because I'm still going to look at the application, the standards, and try to apply it.
My interpretation is that a new decision on use variance and followed by a decision on the site plan approval is how we should proceed on this in the cleanest and most straightforward way. Obviously what would happen in 2018 and 2021 is what happened. And that still exists. You have your opportunity to build whatever it is that you want to build, right? We're not renegotiating what happened 3 years ago, right? We are taking this in. I mean, it's basically a brand new board except for 1 or 2 people, right? And so that is how we are going to proceed. So regardless of what thoughts are there, as the chair of this board, I am saying that we will be looking at this as on its own. So. Susie, I think you
I can talk.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank
Sarah,
you.
we'll get to you.
I would be, I agree with the two of you. I believe it is I know you think it's not a burden on town resources. However, a majority of the calls for fire and rescue do go to senior living and senior citizens. And a lot of times if they don't go in an ambulance, I've heard this from the fire chief many a time. They don't go in an ambulance, they don't get charged, so they're encouraged to call the fire whenever they have a fall, whenever they knock their head or anything, so that they can get quickly checked over. And if they don't ride in the ambulance, they don't get charged. So I host coffee hours for the fire station in my other committee, but so they do. It's going to be a burden, so I don't want you to think that it's going to be no burden on the town. I also, taking away the licensure, I don't remember, I don't remember why we put that in, but I'm sure, I haven't gone back in the minutes, but I feel like if it was put in the minutes, it was put there for a reason. And I don't want to neglect that or look it over for nothing. And it 55 and older, but these are active adults, and we're not putting in things for active adults like the sidewalks and different things like that. So those are just some of the things. I mean, we're doing the active adults and everything, and yet we're having the group adult daycare. So it is like assisted living, which would trigger the EOEA licensing. So in my head, it's very cloudy. Like I don't know. It's very confusing. So I'm very wary of granting relief on that use variance for me.
Whoever wants to go next? Jack, do you want to?
Chair, I thought you summed that up very well at the beginning, because as I've looked at this from the beginning of this hearing, I was not sitting on those first 2 hearings. And I've been trying to go back and forth over the various documents that always seem to come in the last day before we're discussing them. It's been very difficult. So as we're looking at this for the relief of a multifamily density, I would agree with you. This is a tough spot. Now, I would like to go back and start at square one and look at this from the beginning as its own independent application. Because picking and choosing the aspects that he wants to choose to discuss and to change, it doesn't work for this site. And I would not be in favor of that. Now, if he comes back with a new application and we're looking at that, I agree. Use variance for assisted living makes sense. But unlike my colleagues to my left, I don't agree that we're looking at the same thing. I think we're looking at 2 different things. We're looking at a new application or an amendment. So he has the right to go out and build what was granted in 23.
Yep.
So he can take that ball and go with it. Or we look at a beginning of this stuff in square one.
Does anyone else have any other?
Yeah, just quickly, like again, I appreciate, the repeated efforts in coming to the board and involving the town. I appreciate the chair's excellent summary of matters at hand. I still struggle just with the word assisted living and the proposed use of what I consider to be a multifamily property with a adult daycare below. And I think that is, in a way, it kind of contradicts, or not doesn't contradict, but it basically is outside the realm of what was originally approved. So as it's evolved today, I'd have to sit here and say that I don't think it's right for us to kind of come back and reassess an existing permit for what the town had approved when the use of it has been limited.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think a big thing here is understanding why the project was allowed with such high density in the first place, and that was because it was going to be under the umbrella of the elder affairs and license. Once you took that away, the right to have that density is taken away. I understand that the applicant has mentioned that some other towns have, allow for senior living communities similarly as they do for ALRs. But just in my brief research today, I looked at a couple of towns, Shrewsbury and Westboro, and they have whole sections on senior living that also include other considerations that are looked at when getting an application for a senior living project, like, for example, density. I think Westboro requires 5 acres per 30 units, so don't hold me to that, but something that's much more than the ratio, the density. It's here. Same thing with open space. There's requirements for open space. And my last point I want to make is the applicants keeps coming back to the need for affordable senior housing. But then the application, he says that the anticipated rents are going to be between $3,000 and $4,000 a month. And on my calculations, that's not going to be too affordable for a lot of people, especially people who are over 55 and on a fixed income. Getting to the use variance part of it and applying the law, I'm not even really sure how to apply the standard. It's pretty funky, the shape and the lot and topography and soil. I'm not sure warrants relief from the licensing requirement. And I think the same would hold true for relief from the density requirements for multifamily.
Thanks. And what I'll reiterate is I agree, like the town of Northborough does not have a senior living definition or has done sort of any legwork there. So yeah, I think that it is a hole within our bylaws. And so we're, as a board, based on the application, we're trying to sort of bridge the gap of, like you said, Westboro. I think I have Westboro's senior living, 4 pages long of all the things that they define within their senior living thing. Density is one of them. Because it is an affordable, I think, to your point about affordability, there's a difference between obviously capital A, lowercase a, right? Things that are getting designated as affordable that, counts towards like our affordable housing stock. That's an example. But Jake, I think you're in the.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time looking at this at our first meeting in December, and I've spent a lot of time since then looking at the application materials more deeply, comparing our bylaws, looking at the materials that have been referenced by the applicant, looking at the neighboring properties that have been referenced by the applicant, and other characteristics of those and their bylaws, just like Jeff pointed out, I think, other than the parts of the bylaws that were used for comparison, I had to agree with Jeff that they also have a lot of other caveats that those towns have put a lot of thought into, conditions for this kind of development that isn't licensed, that all we're being asked to do here is essentially take our bylaw that says it has to be licensed and say it doesn't have to be licensed, otherwise the same. And I agree with really how Jeff kind of spelled that out, which is, and I think some others may have, which is that, well, removing that does change the character. And so while I'm not looking at this as a, the second variance that you suggested per se, as well, it looks like a multifamily. At the same time, when we're looking at a use variance to allow a use that isn't expressly provided by our bylaws, I think it's appropriate for this board to do what it's doing and look at the most analogous uses and do compare and contrast with those uses as we're doing. And I think we're working really hard to do that. Multifamily is an analogous use. It's not exactly the same. And I understand that what the applicant is saying about directing the project toward a certain type of resident that may have certainly less burden in some areas. I also tend to agree with Susie's, knows way more about this, but just anecdotally, I've been listening into our fire alarm free radio station, which is available for anyone to listen to, for most of December in my free time. And I noticed that most of those calls end up being seniors who've fallen and need EMS attention. And so my anecdotes tend to support what Susie has said. On the other hand, I completely understand the applicant's position about smaller burden on school needs and things based on the age limitation. So all that said, I really want to be a town that's pro-development. First, yes, that's a yes for me. However, when I look, and I do think that could we, in an appropriate case, give a use variance for a use that's not expressly allowed in our bylaws? I think we could in the right case, but I think we would need to do what we're doing now and compare it and then analogize. And when our closest thing that doesn't involve licensing, that doesn't involve 40B type stuff is 11 units, and we're looking at 66 units, that's a really big stretch, I agree. And I do think that when you look at the Coleman House, which is an assisted living, and I do think they have about 2 acres, and I think they have about 60 or 70 units. But from my research and understanding, a lot of those residents don't even own a car. They're there, and they're locked in. I also compared some of the other properties, and none of them had a 33 unit per acre density. They were 8, 12, 10. I think the highest I saw was maybe 18 of the comparative properties that we're supposed to look at as analogous. And so even if when I look at those analogous properties, we're still way too dense for a 2 acre parcel. I mean, if this were a 5 acre or a 10 acre parcel, maybe some of the things the other towns are doing might work better. I think, in fact, the fact that these other towns' bylaws are being presented to us as examples is really, for me, a reason that would suggest that the appropriate thing to do is ask town meeting to change our bylaw, if that's the right thing to do, so that it's like these other towns. If there's a demand for it, I think that it would pass. My last thought about the use variance is I've looked at as best I could to try to find out what other densities are there for similar types of properties outside of the assisted living context, and I found some public information about well-known projects throughout the Commonwealth, and everything that I found that was over 20 units per acre was 40B. It had a provision for affordable housing in it. And we're not looking at any provision for affordable housing here. Again, another reason for me that says if we're ever going to consider something with a 33 unit per acre density that isn't assisted living, I would really reiterate what I said last meeting, which is I really need to see some affordable housing restrictions, and we're not seeing that. I know I've said a lot, but those are all kind of, and then finally, because of all those things that I've said and that you all have said, I'm looking at our authority to grant use variances, which our bylaw allows, is limited by MGL section chapter 48, section 10, that we've all got to stick to, and whether we like it or not. And to me, even if we could find circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape, and topography specifically affecting this land and not other land in this zoning district, which I'm having trouble finding that. I don't think that's where the emphasis has been. Even if we could find that, and a substantial hardship, I'm not sure what the substantial hardship is. I don't think I've heard that. And even if we could find that, it would still, the desirable relief would still need to be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of the ordinance or bylaw. So certainly the requirement to have a licensure had a meaning, and I think the best way to get around that is ask town meeting to get around that. Not for us as a zoning board to say, well, no license is required now. And otherwise, we know that there's a purpose to our multi-housing density bylaw, that I think this would derogate the meaning of that bylaw if we were to grant this use variance as it's been applied for. And so I'm having a hard time on all aspects of our variance analysis. And so I'm where I'm sitting right now, I'm having trouble supporting.
But just as someone who has had family at both Coleman House and place in Northborough, I feel like this place is significantly different. Coleman House is very much a full service assisted living where all 3 meals are provided. There's obviously, if anyone is at Coleman House is driving, I think that's possible. But I appreciate your thought. So I feel like the board has provided feedback to the applicant. I think, you're welcome to sort of respond now or at a future date. But I think that the general thought is, and again, based off town councils, and I think as the chair, we're going to go with what town council is offering. We're going to try to pick something that's analogous to the bylaws, the uses that exist, and you are completely correct that senior living is not defined within Northborough's bylaws. And so we're trying to figure out how to sort of square, this round peg. But I think the board has provided the feedback. Town staff, I don't know if you have any.
No, I mean, I think it's very clear to me, the direction that the board is going in. I'm kind of curious as to whether the applicant would consider withdrawing the application and then maybe thinking of an alternative plan. If you would withdraw without prejudice, then you can refile without having to pay the fee again, as long as it's a similar application. Or would you prefer to just go to the decision?
Is it my turn to talk or do you have last Bob?
Mr. Chair, there are also some public comments, I think, possibly if those.
Yeah, we'll allow you if you want to say something. That's
I'm okay to listen to Bob as well.
I'm just gonna basically echo what Laurie says, after reading the town council's report and hearing the direction of the board, one of the things is that, variance is not to be taken lightly. The other thing to remember is that if you look at a lot of the guidebooks that talk about use variances, any type of financial impact on the town, whether it be good or bad, should be off the table when you're discussing use variance. The powers test gives you clear decisions about what to base a use variance on. And that's what you need to stay focused on. I think in this case, the applicant is right. We have a hole in our zoning bylaws that doesn't provide for this sort of situation, and it probably needs to be looked at and corrected. It's my belief. But considering what we have in place now, we can't massage what we'd like to see in the future and make it work here. So what you got to do is stay with the parameters that are set forth in the powers test and everything else, and keep in mind that the powers test gives you the parameters to work with. Like I said before, it's not whether or not there's an increase or decrease in fire activity or an impact on the schools. All that stuff is off the table for the discussion in the use variance. So I would just say, Lori, you got to keep a narrow path when you're kind of digesting it. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Yeah, sorry.
The first I had heard tonight was about the septic having a different impact, or that there's a different test for the septic for elderly. Is that true?
We did receive an email from the health agent saying that the septic system that was approved in 2018 is sufficient for this modified application.
Yeah,
So,
for the number of bedrooms, but is it a different test for an elder facility rather than for like a regular multifamily? Because the applicant had mentioned that, and I was just wondering, because if we applied for the licensing and it was denied, and then we were stuck with a multifamily building.
so I have the email that they provided, and it looks like it's based on gallons. So the 2-bedroom adult units, 54 units times 150 gallons per day per unit. 12 bedrooms times 110 gallons per day per bedroom.
Okay, so it's just adults.
And then it says miscellaneous adult daycare capacity, and it's listed as 600 gallons per day.
Okay,
I don't think the septic,
nothing.
just regardless of,
Okay.
I think it's based on like bedrooms and that's. Jack has a.
Chair.
Jack, yeah.
I think Laurie sort of summed this up. We have an application before us. We can't decide, start a new application based upon multifamily. We can't decide to start a new one based on assisted living. That's not up to us to decide. That's up to the applicant. So we have an application before us that I think the board has indicated it has no pleasure in passing. And I think we need to go back to the applicant at this point and give him the option to either proceed, which will bring to a vote on this application, or to withdraw without prejudice and to come back, possibly come back with a different application, or go off and do what he pleases. But it's not up to for us to pick the path for him to go down. It's up to him.
Yeah.
But on this application, I think the board has given its opinion of where it's going.
Mr. Chair, if I could just share quick housekeeping. I assume we all did, I also reviewed, there was a letter from Fran Backstrom that I also looked at. I don't know if you want to put that in the record just as something we looked at. She's also here, so she may just want to summarize what she said in the letter, but I won't defer to the chair on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can, I was actually gonna listen to the applicant first and then, or if the applicant has anything to say, and then we can open it up to public comment and then sort of just go from there. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chair, I think the direction I'm hearing today, which, that's the direction of the board, and I respect that. It's significantly different than the direction we were heading last time, otherwise, honestly, I would have not done a lot of things I had done, but that's okay, it is part of life. But it seems to me that if that's the direction, honestly, then we're gonna go back to what we had. And I would think probably we'll just ask for continuing this meeting and then perhaps, come to the next meeting to either withdraw so everybody has a time to think and process. But I'm honestly leaning toward withdrawing the application without prejudice at this point. Because to be honest, and again, respectfully so, sir, you guys don't have to look at this way, but when I look at the situation, I look at that, there is assisted living and there are independent livings, okay? And those are called senior livings. And by the way, there is another facility, very, very similar in size, which is the Orchard Grove on Walnut Street in Shrewsbury. It's 2 acre, you can check, 2 point small, and it has actually 80 units or so. And yes, it is an assisted living. And that was our benchmark when we were, coming here in front of you. Very, very similar facility. So in many ways, again, when we were taking out the memory care unit, from the lower level and making it a garage, in our humble opinion, we were lowering the burden on the town. When we were, taking some of the amenities, and also we have the shuttle, we have a lot of things. It doesn't matter. I think at this point, no matter what I say, because the board is looking and had some, conversation or whatever, and consider certain things. That's your right. I believe in good faith. I was trying to offer a newer solution with where towns are heading. You don't have to believe me because you look at, I'm maybe prejudiced to my thinking. But I do believe that if, we are not heading in that direction, I do believe I may have to stick with what we were working on. And, we'll just go with that. But at this point, I would say, maybe we'll just ask for continuation. There's no need of further discussion. I had very loud and clear which way we're heading. So we will, if you guys want me to just give you right now, I can, but I would say maybe we all take a breather and we all call it continue and then come to the next meeting. And at that point, either I withdraw or, maybe offer some alternate solution.
Yeah, so I don't think we're gonna make a decision tonight. I think that was given. I think the purpose of this, from my perspective, was to at least give you some feedback from the board so that we didn't get to a point of sort of no return.
Appreciate that.
And I do view, what town council had advised us is how this board should proceed, which is, and to your point, you are correct. There is a gap within, Northborough's zoning bylaws, which is sort of going back to the last meeting where I was asking if you had gone to the planning board to see if they could propose an amendment or some sort of guidance on how they could view, because ultimately the planning board is the, elected officials that write the zoning bylaws. We are just the zoning board of appeals that sort of takes what the bylaws have and tries to make, things fit. So, I don't think we're not making a decision tonight. We are going to continue this this case, but I think that we did want to provide, or at least I did want to provide feedback to you, the applicant, and the board's opinions, as such. So.
No, we definitely appreciate. Honestly, had I gotten any glimpse of this in the last meeting, I wouldn't be even here. So we have spent significant amount of resources and money to take steps in doing all that direction. But it's okay. It seems to me that board is not looking at all to what I was presenting because, but again, I don't need to debate. I respect what you guys have to say. You guys have done your due diligence. That's fine. I do have a feeling that 10 years later or 5 years later, you will be building these facilities in independent living, because that's where everybody's headed. Other towns examples I gave you, but that's fine.
Yeah, so I think if you are so passionate about independent living, which obviously it seems like you are, planning board meets tomorrow night. They are well within the process of starting to write bylaws for the 2025 town meeting. I know that they're always looking for input in terms of new ideas and new things that can be fixed within the town of Northborough. So
I'm happy to help. Lori and I have talked about that. And by the way, just a side comment on the pricing. I don't know if you guys know that the assisted living at Orchard Grove, they're like $8,000 to $10,000 per month. So $8,000 to $10,000 to 4,000, what we're doing is a huge difference. Yes, it does not go all the way to, 1,500 or 2,000. I'd love to see it, but at the end of the day, we have to make economic sense. But anyway,
So I think at this point, I know that this is a public meeting. I do see, there's no one here from the public, but I do see people on hybrid. If there is anyone that is interested to make a public comment at this time, if you could please raise your hand. All right, I see Fran Backstrand has raised her hand. Hi, Fran, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you very much, Paul. This is Fran Backstrand at 76 Cedar Hill Road. I just want you to understand that assisted living residencies are governed by Massachusetts general law and have very, very specific requirements as to what services they provide, what the units look like, the staffing and such. Once this applicant determined that senior living, independent living was the way he was going, you shouldn't even think about the assisted living model at all. He is building an age-restricted apartment building for active seniors. He's asking you to put it on a very small piece of property, therefore it is very dense. As the chair of the Council on Aging, I can tell you, yes, I agree with this gentleman. Independent living options for older adults is in demand, but they are in demand for people who are on fixed income, not the 62-year-old who's still working with a six-figure salary who may want to live in a 580 square foot one-bedroom apartment. So if there was a way in which independent living for seniors could be developed on that 2-acre lot, absolutely. But we're talking about truly affordable when the average Social Security income for seniors today is like $1,600 a month. He is correct that assisted living residences do come at a cost of about $6,000 to $12,000 in our service area, but they include at minimum 2 meals a day, linen service, laundry service, personal care if you need it, a lot more. So you really need to take that off the table and just look at this as age-restricted housing and whether it's an appropriate location for that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Fran. I don't see any other hands up in the attendees at this particular time.
Mr. Chair, can I just make one quick comment?
Sure.
And I appreciate the applicant's comments about if you would have known this a month ago, you could have saved some money, and I wish I could, reverse time. I want to say for myself, at our first day of this hearing, I didn't have enough information that I could have comfortably said yes. And so from my perspective, I needed time to figure out, is there any way that I could support this? And so I spent a lot of time trying to think and bend my head around and go through any avenue that I could to try to find, is there a way that gets me to a yes vote on this? And unfortunately I couldn't, but that was why I needed more time, and I'm sorry the time didn't help you. And by the way, your folks who presented the parking studies, were we to get to that issue, they were very persuasive and helpful for me. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be looking at that, but I thought that was very persuasively presented on the parking front, but unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be talking about that.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
Sure.
The question is, one thing going into my head that while we were designing this, every time you relook at something, you make improvements. At least that's how I've done things in life.
Yeah.
So I believe that quite a few improvements we have done in this design without changing the envelope, without, So I'm just struggling in my mind, and I'll just be, out loud here because that's what the question I'm going to ask Lori. Those changes, the way I look at that, if we are going to, it seems to me, we're going to go toward whatever we have. But if we want to make some improvements, I see them as administrative improvements. But how do you want me to? I don't have all the list right now. I don't have the list right now. But
So some of the things that I can think of that would be a change from what was originally approved in 21. Had to do with the location and species of vegetation, you know, street trees. The parking lot configuration, the street lighting, the parking lot lighting. You are proposing a change to the driveway configurations.
Well, we are going we're going almost back to the original, even in, last time when I was in front of you, yes, I was moving more on the right-hand side, but with the consultation of, you know, the traffic study and all that, we're gonna stick more to what was originally approved.
Okay, so what Mass DOT already approved and, okay, all right, that's good,
Yeah, they
because that was
Mass
a
DOT didn't-
concern I
Mass DOT
had.
didn't approve it yet, but they, in concept, like the location and where they were going.
We didn't have the permit, but they
Yeah.
sent a support letter, so
Okay.
we're gonna stick with more close to that. But like, for example, I give you example, like we built a pretty decent size, you know, park on the right-hand side, that's just a great
Yeah.
improvement. There's things like that. Or an extreme, I don't know if I want to give this example, but an extreme example would be the septic, for example, versus the sewer, right? So, and of course, we will not have the adult daycare center in this whole thing. We'll have all those things ripped off. We go back to all the amenities we had before. So, I mean, if we're talking about those type of changes with the Executive Office of Elderly Affairs, I'm not asking, take the variance discussion out.
Right, you're specifying specifically a site plan, the special permit site plan changes as opposed to any sort of use variance.
Yes.
Yep.
So do we need the board or are those administrative changes?
Of course, you've changed things so many times that it's hard for me to remember where we were before this submission. Because there were some things that I was still waiting for that you hadn't supplied yet.
But those are
Maybe the safest thing to do is just come up, because of
Yeah.
course, then the plan won't show the under parking. So that would be a significant change that they'd have to approve. So if you're going back to not having the parking under the building, then I would think it would just be an administrative, you know, because there've been so many modifications, I'd probably like to get the ZBA's blessing, but it wouldn't be a public hearing unless you're interested in putting that parking in the building, then we're still on the public hearing, but
So I think regardless of whatever changes are, those would actually be modifications
correct.
to the decision from 2020.
So
that
the
is separate
88
from.
unit,
Yep.
Yes.
yeah. So I think probably if you guys could get together
yes,
and
we can.
figure out what those are and
Correct.
present them to us, then we can discuss whether you need a further relief from the board or not.
Fair enough. We'll just wanna, we need to do that and then we'll get with you.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we can decide well before the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether we need to come in here or not.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Right, yes, I think any sort of changes, you guys know more than I do, but any changes to the 2021 site plan that was approved.
Yeah.
If it's exceeds a certain threshold that you guys determined to be,
Mhm.
would require us to step in and.
Yeah.
Then yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah, if it's just a
familiar.
tree or a street light, then you don't care about that. But if it's changing the number of parking spaces, increasing them significantly or decreasing them significantly,
I
that's.
mean, we can decide pine trees versus maple trees.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to get this out of my chest that, you know, what I'm thinking of. Like give you some direction.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So, do you have any other, okay, is it anyone on the board have any other comments or questions?
Be like a motion to continue.
Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue the hearing for 3943 King Street to our Tuesday, January 28th meeting at 7 p.m.
Second.
Brian made a motion and Susie seconded. All those in favor?
That's for both of the things that were including the special use application and the use rates that we're hearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next up on the agenda is minutes, November 26th. 24. And so review the minutes. There is comment is in the minutes here.
Mr. Chair, I have a tiny one, but I don't even think justify as an amendment, just me making a comment, the record is what it is. On page 7, under the column Pond Road, it said, Mr. Jones sent a letter from the homeowners association. Whether I said that or not, it wasn't the homeowners association, it was just other neighbors in the same townhouse. I'm not asking to be on any bit, I'm just clarifying that if I don't think the homeowners association was involved, but I just put the minutes out of them. Because I think we do it.
It actually was the homeowners association.
Oh, maybe it was.
I think we had a letter from the homeowners association and then it was signed by all the homeowners.
Okay. I remember. Neighbors, yeah, whether it moves from.
Well, let's leave it and maybe my memory is faulty. At any rate, it's,
Do you need to eject it or just pull out?
I don't intend to sort of micromanage every word in these things. I think they're obviously very thorough and I think in general they're great, so.
Okay. Is
Should
there
we
a
go to that
motion
one?
to?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if you right click on
Chair,
the,
I'd like to make a motion.
you right click on it.
The meeting minutes for November 26th report as submitted with the minor change by.
I'll second.
Grab a motion, second.
So much.
Aye. Is there anything in general?
Yeah, just.
Okay, so do we have any other? So are there any, so, you know, we will, obviously, we have this case continued for our January 28th meeting. Are there any other cases you're aware of at this particular
We
time?
do have one other case, however, I have not opened the file yet,
Okay.
it was just kind of a heads up from Michelle.
Okay. So the sign at Wegmans Plaza?
Yeah.
It's a permit, actually,
Yeah.
he can explain it to you,
Yeah.
he's reviewed it already.
You got a family that put up one of those pergolas, 12 by
Sure.
10 or whatever. It's within 5 feet to the property line. The next door neighbor called and complained. He said, "This is in fact infraction, zoning bylaw." So, so you either move it or you can apply for a variance. Decision. So they decided to build my decision. Ask this is David Vince. So
They're appealing your interpretation and not applying for things?
they are applying for the variance.
Oh, okay.
What's the property, in case you want to do a little recon work?
2 Corn Farm Road.
I'm impressed that you just remember that off the top of your head.
It's amazing the things I forget.
Does anyone else have any other business before the board?
Kind of week's coming up in February, the week of 10th through the 14th, but it will be spread out for all of February, so I'm hoping to set up a couple hours, if anyone wants to do something. Story, like the coffee hour for you to share.
What is involved in kind of this?
Show up for coffee hour.
I'll be especially nice to every customer.
Yeah, if people come and sit, they come and sit. Our goal is we try to get like a new person that's never attended a community affairs event at each coffee hour, and so far every year, like somebody new has shown up to a coffee hour, every coffee hour, so it's been great. So we do the chief of police, the fire chief, the I'm gonna ask Stephanie to do one. Greg and, Greg Martineau did one last year with the school committee chair, Kelly Gannett. Just trying to get it, we spread them out throughout February though, because otherwise I'm running from coffee hour to coffee hour. Oh, drinking a lot of coffee. Yeah, so other groups are gonna be doing something like Trinity Church is gonna be doing a chili cook-off, and the Garden Club's gonna be doing something, I think. So we're in the early planning stages, but I'll have more at our next meeting.
Who's eligible for the chili cook-off?
I don't know. The man contacted me last month and said he's gonna get back to me, so. Should be fun.
Think about jumping in, Bob?
I'll be a testing.
I'm sure.
I've won 3 others with my children.
Really? I'll be a tester. Do we have rules and regulations for the board?
Great question. I have the same question.
For the board?
Yes,
I don't believe it.
I think we should make some.
I think the
And I
bylaw says we shall have one, so.
So what we do have is, so last year we changed under site plan review. So the planning board's rules and regs apply to the zoning board of appeals whenever the ZBA is approving the site.
I'll talk more about submission of documents, not accepting them, within 3 days of the meeting. And
Yeah.
we should have time to get these documents before us, to review them, without having them sent to us in the middle of a Patriots game, when we're sitting there freezing our butts off.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Same, or a bill same.
But I'm just saying, I think, there's,
Yeah, and it would
we
be
should have
helpful,
some rules and regulations.
it would be helpful, that I know this is frustrating, it's frustrating for me as somebody who's trying to review and prepare things in
You
advance of
shouldn't
the
have to be
meeting.
doing that on a Sunday.
It's frustrating for you folks because of course I'm sending you stuff, so many things last minute. So it would be helpful just to have some sort of definitive answer. Like what I tell people as a guide is, you need to get me stuff the Tuesday before the meeting, so 1 week in advance. I know some boards, they say, well, if you don't get it, by the Tuesday, 1 week in advance, then there's an automatic continuance of the public hearing. So you absolutely will not get a decision if you're late. So if you folks can maybe think about that.
Sure.
And then maybe at the next meet, and we can put that right there on our webpage. And so when folks are looking for applications and whatnot, it'll say right there. And then there won't be hopefully the arguments that I currently get.
Do we need to change like the bylaws and stuff? Do we use rules and
So
regulations?
the bylaw says that we are supposed to, says shall, so have, because I know the planning board has them, I know the select board has them, although they're not available online for some suspicious reason. They're physically in their room. Yeah, whoever's listening. But I think we, Mr. Chair, you wouldn't mind putting on the agenda for our next meeting to continue that discussion, I think.
It could be just a discussion until, so we can feel this out over a couple meetings and maybe we go nowhere.
The homework is.
I'm just saying, Laurie's getting stuff, I mean, that's not right.
I'll see what other towns have done and
Yeah.
whether we like them or not.
So we.
And I'm not blaming you for that one. I saw
Oh,
it
no,
came in
no.
Friday at 12 something.
It's the nature of the business. I mean, I got 4 emails on Christmas Day
Oh, I think you guys have more than accommodated.
and I got 2 on
Yeah.
New Year's Day in my automatic messenger since I was out until this
Right.
morning. So, the question is, and they want answers like that.
Yep.
And, I hate to admit it, we're all humans, there's only 28 hours in a day. So, it is something that comes up fairly often. I mean, I think Laurie sees more of it than I do. Although I get my share, but I think she bears the bulk. So, something like that might help.
Yeah, or like I was asking Laurie earlier, the documents that came in tonight, I said, how do I know what's changed? And she said, by the date. I said, I got the date. But I'm sitting looking at the plans and looking at There was nothing to show me what had changed. There was no color code, no index, no
I do
nothing, so
typically, yeah,
that you just can't do that.
I do typically, so when I give my
I
letter,
saw your letter, I agree.
so then I send it to them and I say, take my comments and respond to them so that I know that you've addressed them or you're gonna ignore them or whatever the case may be. So a lot of times they do that, but not always.
But
And then
they're
it's
doing their
really,
work.
it's really tedious because I gotta like double check every page
And
and.
it's not up to you to do their work. I'm sorry, you're getting paid to do a job, not their job.
We can definitely add it to the agenda and at least.
I'll come up with some rules and regulations, I've done it before. Just
Awesome.
to start the discussion,
Yeah,
not that
Definitely.
I wanna adopt, I'm just saying, it'll just start a
Sure.
discussion, that's all. And maybe you don't like them, or you do like them, I'm not sold on anything, I'm just throwing it out there.
That would be especially helpful for me.
Well, we're on the same wavelength, because I was reading our bylaws, I was like, this, they buried somewhere.
I don't have to guess it like you want, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack, appreciate that.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
would you like a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I think so.
And then move to adjourn. Second, is that the word we're supposed to say?
All those in favor, motion to adjourn, seconded by Brad. All right, motion adjourned. Thanks, Terry, appreciate it.
Carrie,